I think we're live. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
We just thought we'd give you a little update while we've been a bit quiet these past nearly it's 2 months, more than 2 months since we did our last live stream. Our last one was on the evening in which Dr. John McDougall died, and we haven't done one since. So what have we been up to? Well, there's been some good and some bad. I'll start with the good. In the middle of July, Malcolm and I got married. We've been together we've known each other for 16 years, met in the winter of 2008, and we decided earlier this year that we would finally do it. And a small ceremony in front of our immediate family in our home, and it was just delightful. So that was an absolute
20th of July.
An absolute high. And we then went to a place we love where we met, Falls Creek, to do some skiing the following week. And 4 days later, I had a big crash and smashed my shoulder. It was actually not a big crash in a sense that it was a silly fall. I came down on my elbow and smashed the head of the humerus and needed urgent major surgery. So it's nearly 6 weeks ago that this happened, and it's been a really tough time for me. I'm still not sleeping that well, getting there, starting to move the shoulder more, and it'll be a long haul. So because of that, we cancelled our immersion for September. It was at a critical point where I needed to be working hard and promoting it and trying to get a few more registrations for it. And I couldn't do a thing for many weeks. I couldn't work at all. So
just so needed a full-time carer.
And Malcolm was my full-time carer. He didn't realise what the marriage vows actually meant, and that they were going to get tested 4 days after we got married. So yes. So thanks. Yes, thanks for those. Sorry to hear about my shoulder. Yes, it's been a tough time, really has been. And I'm not out of the woods yet, but I'll get there. And so, yes, we wanted to explain why we had cancelled our immersion quite suddenly, and we refunded those who had paid. And so our next one, our 7-day immersion, is next March, and be full steam ahead for that.
We're looking forward to that, and that won't be cancelled. Well, let's not tempt fate.
Yes, so... But what we are doing differently this year is that we're collaborating again with Anita Ricky from Digger's Veggie Kitchen in Anglesey. We ran 12 immersions with her at Anglesey up until first half of 2021. And after moving to the Yarra Valley, she wasn't able to come with us, but we're going to do a weekend retreat at Queenscliff, 18th to 20th of October. It's very much like an introductory weekend. We're not calling it an immersion. You won't be immersed in everything, but you will be eating delicious, healthy, whole food, plant-based food from Friday evening through to a Sunday afternoon.
It's very much Anita's event with a focus on the food and the food preparation, but we'll be giving a few short talks as part of the introductory weekend.
Yep. So if any of you have not already been to any of our events and want to try us out, then have a look at our either Facebook page. Actually, it's only been about 4 days ago that we set all this up, and I don't even think I've got it on our website yet. I'm still on a bit of a go slow with my work at the moment, but I'm getting there. So that's our big news. And back to the live streams, we had back at the end of June, we thought we were on a roll with. We've got so many topics that we want to cover. So we thought tonight we would just come online and tell you our story and mention some of the things that we're planning to do. We've written many FAQs on our website and pages on our nutrition website. And we like to be able to talk to some of those topics. And so that's the second half of
one
this
of
year.
the topics. So we're quite keen about doing quite a few more live stream events this year, covering different topics. We're going to go back and cover the salt topic again. I think it's often underappreciated in the whole foods plant-based community, just how much salt can be in the food, and the effects on things as wide-ranging as joint pain and blood pressure, many other health aspects and inflammatory effects. And I think there's been too many people out there sort of putting up recipes that are quite loaded with salt, often with all the different condiments and soy sauces and tamaris and misos and the like, rather than being obvious. And there are national recommendations for sodium intake, but that's not the optimal. That's the maximum intake recommended for communities who eat a lot of processed food and can't avoid but at least having a moderately high salt intake. And I don't think that should be us. I think when we do nutrition, we like to recommend what we think is an optimal diet, and then leave it up to you to decide, what compromises you're going to make to that to fit with your lifestyle and your taste. Other things we'd like to talk about is protein. Yeah, protein again. I guess the protein's something that's being really pushed by industries that want you to believe we need a lot more protein, and have been very busy over the last decade funding research. So we'll be doing some sessions talking about topics such as, do older people need more protein? If so, how much more? Does the science really support a higher recommended intake for those groups? We'll also be talking about the harmful effects of adverse protein, the aging effects, the cancer effects, the other metabolic effects, and particularly in reference to, protein supplements, plant-based ones as well. And what else have we been doing? Since we were last live, I went in one of the Gold Coast running events. I was going to go to a longer event, but I did the 10K in the end. And so I thought that we might do a session on sports nutrition, really not trying to make it a comprehensive, but really drawing on my own experience as, can I call myself an athlete?
Well, I think so. He came second in his age group in the 10K run.
Yeah, the
so
65-year-olds are slowing down.
And it was a big event. I mean,
I was ahead of 85% of the field, I guess. I don't know if that qualifies me to sort of say I'm an athlete talking about, but I'll certainly be quite happy to share some thoughts about what one could eat and how one could fuel oneself, for endurance and other sporting events. I think we often have people who express to us just how confused they get about what I should eat. Like, what's this plate model? And it's like got half a dozen different parts, and it's got all these other things and a huge list, 24 things I have to include every day. I think throughout our presentations on different nutrition topics, we'll try and keep things simple. We like to see people get the core of whole foods plant-based nutrition right. That they can start to fiddle around with little bits and pieces after that. But the core of it is simple and should be simple to understand. And that's what we'll try and do.
It sort of reminds me of back in June when we, were very upset to hear of the death of Dr. John McDougall. When we reflected on that day, I remember after we'd finished the live stream thinking we didn't really talk about how his practice informed us I don't think we did. And so just hearing Malcolm talk about keeping it simple, it really is following the principles of those who've gone before us, such as Dr. John McDougall with, you've got to have enough of the starches on your plate. And we're talking, of course, the healthy, whole grains, potatoes, legumes and those starchy foods. And keeping it simple. And, part of the McDougall message, supported by people like psychologist Doug Lisle and dietitian Jeff Novick, is, don't major in minor things. You really, you need to get the basics right, and don't get too worried about, do I have to eat this food and that food? But isn't there science showing the benefits of this or that? And, one of the things about, and, we could do a whole session talking about the science, that so much scientific research these days is funded by industry. Now, when Malcolm was talking about protein, you might be thinking, say the meat dairy industries. I found some research a few months ago. I mean, I think it was, shared by others, even in the plant-based world, as evidence that the older people, or to prevent sarcopenia or some topic like that, needed more protein. And having not long before that read the book Ultra Processed People by Chris Van Tulleken, where I'd been really put onto the fact that there are these huge companies that are in the business of selling, parts to go into processed foods. And the funder of a particular protein research was one of these very large multinational, I think based in France, companies that are in the business of selling the isolated protein to go into all those products that everyone's out there going and buying. And so you just need to understand, when you hear about this little bit of research that shows the benefit of this or that to quote Marion Nessel, who's written quite a bit on this topic, when industry funds science, it's just marketing. It's just marketing. So anyone, since we're not going to really talk about any more topics now, but if you've got any questions, we feel free to pop them in the chat, and we can answer them now. So thanks, Karen. I'm glad you like watching us for this reason, that we like to keep it simple, and we like to sort of look beneath the surface as to, when claims about nutrition are made, what's behind it. So anything else you wanted to say?
There's been a big study recently released. I went back to the snow and I did some more skiing, only because Jenny's sister invited her to stay with her and keep her company and things. And I brought back a cold. So I gave it to you too. But we're getting over that. There's some recent very large international study released talking about the association they found between meat intake, including chicken, meat intake, basically animal protein intake, and type 2 diabetes. And of course, this isn't the only study over the that's found this. And I noticed that it's got a bit of media attention, and that there's always the usual debunking going on, but I think studies like that really sort of should inform health organizations, medical bodies, that the time's really finished. It's all over for the idea that we could eat even moderate amounts of meat and chicken and fish and still be healthy. We might talk about that study. We'll do one or two sessions where we sort of focus on a relevant study or a group of relevant studies.
So yeah, we're going to have to fit a few live streams in over the next few months, aren't we? We've got so much to say. We haven't actually planned our next 4-part webinar series. Still looking to see if we can fit one in. It would have to be after the Queenscliff weekend, Queenscliff retreat. We have a question about severe chronic anemia.
Would depend on the severe. Okay, so it really is anemia, not just borderline hemoglobin. Would depend on the type, and I guess the most common would be iron deficiency. And I think one thing to remember if you're having difficulty getting enough iron is to also focus on eliminating as much as possible the foods that are using up your day's calorie budget and have zero iron. That is like the oil, for example, or foods that have had half or 2/3 of the iron removed. That's the refined grains. And focusing on a consistency of vegetable intake. And I mean, we know that there are some of our leafy greens that we don't absorb iron well from, but there are others that we do absorb the iron from. That's a simple answer. So my suggestion would be lots of legumes, whole grains, skip on the oil, stay away from the refined grains and ultra-processed food, and include generous amounts of fruits and vegetables in your day. That would be the simple answer. And not to get caught up with like, what's the very highest food that's very highest in iron, because that will inevitably be some seed that's just super high in calories and it looks high in iron, but probably isn't, any higher than any legume, for example.
I mean, that's actually one of my pet hates, that whenever someone asks, what's a good source of, whether it's iron, calcium, protein, that you've got to factor in calorie density. If you haven't heard my calorie density talk, then I recommend you sign up for one of our programs. I'm doing the calorie density talk at the Queenscliff weekend, and also it's part of our 4-part webinar series. It's so important to understand that. And so instead of looking at how much iron by weight per 100 grams, 100 grams of nuts is like 600 calories. 100 grams of say whole wheat pasta is
125,
far fewer calories. So you can actually you have to have a level playing field. And on some of the pages on our website, I've done this for iron and protein and calcium, is to look at per 100 calories, how much, how many milligrams of whatever it is, or grams of whatever it is per 100 calories, or to look at with something like protein as a percent of calories. So people often say, okay, you've got to eat the nuts and seeds to get all of those nutrients. No, you don't. You just need to be eating, sort of good, whole grains and legumes.
But you do need to be eating, and I think there's a lot of people are under eating, not because they're anorexic or have a body image, but I think on a whole foods plant-based diet, it's very easy to under eat. As McDougall would say, we need all those starches for energy, and I guess that's where physical activity could be your friend or your enemy. Like, it will increase your calorie requirement, so you'll need to eat even more, but then if it does increase your calorie requirement, you'll eat more and you'll get more of every nutrient.
So before we go to John's comment, I just want to Jill, your comment must have been, we did a live stream on bones, didn't we? Anyway, so glad to see that we can have inspired some people to do more strength work. And certainly as soon as I'm allowed back in the gym, I shall be doing a lot more. At the moment, I'm still doing all the very simple basic shoulder exercises. I actually had
it was a catastrophic injury of the shoulder joint that necessitated an emergency complete shoulder joint replacement.
I can see John in our audience. So it was a reverse shoulder replacement.
Yeah, reverse shoulder arthroplasty.
So I have a bit of work ahead of me. Just in that question about what's the best way to get calcium, it's just eating whole plant foods and not focusing on individual foods as being a particularly good source of calcium. And
we don't need a replacement for dairy, because dairy's generally not helpful for bones and not an essential part of the diet to start with.
And so are you looking at what John's comment is? Seems it's a question a bit too complex for me. While you're reading that, anything to comment?
Yeah. John's just commented about the certain areas of the male anatomy that actually have very small arteries compared to the coronary artery. And so the term ED, erectile dysfunction, is an early warning for early death from coronary heart disease. And the sort of blood supply to those areas is probably not an issue that's restricted to older men.
Anything else?
No, not really.
No? Well, we might sign off. We never make promises as to exactly when the next live stream will be, but 7:30 on a Sunday is a pretty good time for us. Got another comment that's come in. Making sense of that one. My husband had a bypass for his LAD, but not the stent. What's the best time for a follow-up angiogram, and is that the best test? Or is it best to start with a stress test?
I'd say best to start with a stress test, because that's less likely to kill you than an angiogram, less invasive, and it sort of gives you the practical information. If on the stress test, your ECG, you start to get chest pain, or the ECG shows, or the shows part of the heart muscle being starved of oxygen, then you've got a problem. But if it doesn't, then I guess you don't really need anyone poking around your coronary arteries, injecting dangerous dye into you to see what's going on, because you don't have a problem if the stress test is normal.
Now, Christine's got a question around meal timing, and we could certainly do a live stream. There's a lot to say about meal timing, fasting. We might be talking about that in a few weeks. So the question about if you've eaten a large portion of meals, don't feel hungry until 10 or 11 a.m. Should you try and force yourself to eat earlier?
I'd sort of say not forcefully, but to teach your body to, for example, have a couple of bits of fruit in the morning. Just as we've shown people at our immersions before, the video, Doug Lyle video, the cram circuit, and there's an online version of that, the cram circuit. That's where you get this conditioned compensatory response, where, like, if you always eat rich food at 9:30 at night, then at 9:30 at night, everything in your body, and probably your microbes too, go, oh, you're hungry, aren't you? It's time. And I think the reverse thing can happen. Like,
you don't eat breakfast.
Even if I've had a few days where I've been very active and need more calories, I generally don't get up at 4 a.m. and eat food, because my body just knows I never get fed then. So so the same could happen to someone, that if they never eat breakfast, their body might still need the energy, but just be sort of programmed to sort of go, no, I know I never get food at this time. So that'd be my suggestion. Just start eating a small amount earlier in the day, like 1 or 2 pieces of fruit, for example.
I mean, it is good to have a nice lengthy overnight fast, but you don't need to be pushing it out too far. So, I mean, we typically don't eat for at least 12 hours. Well, I don't. Maybe you get up and eat something.
A medjool date with my cup of tea and things before I go out and exercise.
One of the big problems, if you are eating whole food plant-based and relatively low in fat, if you eat your breakfast too late, and you might not even actually eat more than 2 meals in a day, whereas for many people you think, oh, that's great because I'll lose weight. It doesn't always work that way. And if, day to day, if you only ate, put it this way, I could not maintain my weight if I only ate 2 meals a day. I need to eat 3 really good meals, and sometimes, have substantial snacks in the afternoon. I often call it my second lunch, just to hold my body weight, not to lose weight. And so it can be tempting, if you're wanting to lose weight, to shorten the feeding window. but it's very hard to get enough calories in eating whole food, plant-based, low-fat if you're
And
doing
possibly
that.
to get enough nutrients and antioxidants.
Well, that's the
as
thing.
well.
If you're not eating, if you only eat 1,000 calories a day, that's only from that 1,000 calories that you can get iron, calcium, and all those, and protein, all those nutrients. So when people worry about maybe older people are not eating enough protein, it's probably they're not eating enough of any nutrients. It's not just the protein.
They're not eating enough, and
Not
what they
eating
are,
enough.
it has too much oil and ultra processed biscuits and things like that. And someone said something about joint. Interesting about joint surface cartilage and arthritis pain and symptoms. There's not a direct correlation. Some people have joints that on X-ray are almost bone on bone, and yet they function fairly well. Whole foods, plant-based, low sodium, avoid oil diet can often reduce the amount of aching and stiffness that people get in their joint, even if the surface is fairly damaged. The other thing in conventional medical circles, conventional medical teaching, and I'm right behind this in this respect, in regard to knee pain, is there's been quite a lot of work done that's found that instead of resting the knee, that if people with osteoarthritis of the knee do appropriate strengthening activities for the knee, that it actually reduces the pain. Given the joint damage is still the same, but the pain's reduced as the person gradually builds up the strength around the knee. Someone said, "Where's Queenscliff?"
It's in the Bellarine Peninsula in Victoria. It's Queenscliff, Victoria.
About half an hour from Geelong.
So it's about an hour and a half's drive from Melbourne, and you can get there by public transport, either from Melbourne Airport or Melbourne City via Geelong. And it's quite near the entrance to Port Phillip Bay, so it's a beautiful spot. Beautiful place. And we actually have been to this venue once before. We tested it out a few months ago for everyone who'd ever attended our immersions, either in the Yarra Valley or in Anglesea. We invited them to a reunion weekend a few months back, and we had this venue to ourselves. It's got many, many bedrooms, and
it's a big old rooming house.
It's a lot of fun, and we're hopefully we'll use it again next year, but we've got this booking in October to run this weekend retreat. So if you're interested, let us know. I shall put a link to Anita's done all the setup, because I'd said to her a few weeks ago, I'm not in a great situation to spend too much time at my computer. I'm getting better at it now. I'll just
so no one else
hide behind the scar.
The hideous scar.
And actually, just Malcolm's comment about exercising to relieve pain. I mean, I'm so aware of the journey I have with this shoulder joint that I have to move it, and it hurts, but it's the only way through. I've got to exercise through the pain to eventually be free of pain. And it can seem counterintuitive, and I can see how many people could end up with a shoulder that doesn't move as much as maybe it could have if you put off by that. So yes, that's what I'm dealing with at the moment.
The surgeon and the regular visits to Jenny's physiotherapist sort of guides her on, on what to do, and so how much can she do?
Okay, I think we should sign off. We've been going for almost half an hour. So thank you all for joining us. And for those of you, because we live stream to both YouTube and Facebook, some of you might wonder where the questions have come from. So some of them come in through YouTube and some come in through Facebook, in case you're confused about that. And we'll hopefully see you within 2 weeks.
Yeah,
certainly.
Within a couple of
weeks, we'll do another live stream, probably on a Sunday night, maybe another night of the week. Sometimes I think
we'll mix it around a bit.
we'll just go live. Another comment from John about a hip fracture, bone on bone. No symptoms, though he can't run. Okay.
Can just walk, do a hilly 8-kilometre walk.
Anyway, so thanks very much and see you all next time. Thanks for joining us.